As Israeli airstrikes intensify in Gaza, a top Netanyahu aide now lands in Washington for high-stakes ceasefire talks with US officials. We are joined by Professor Tim Harcourt from UTS, the Airport Economist channel here as well. Now, Tim, we are getting news through that President Trump is suggesting that Israel has now agreed to the terms of a ceasefire. Pretty big news. Here is the tweet here now as well. My representatives had a long, productive meeting with the Israelis today, and it goes on to talk about that ceasefire. Obviously, there's been a lot of pressure from President Trump on Benjamin Netanyahu to end the bloodshed, end the violence in Gaza. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, he would say that he did what he promised Israel. He got rid of the nuclear capability of the Iranian regime. So, I mean, he's delivered. So there'd be a fair bit of suasion now on Benjamin Netanyahu to deliver on his part of the deal. I mean, I saw some rumours a couple of days ago that there was a ceasefire deal very, very close from Israeli sources, and it seemed the conditions were a little bit complicated, but it seemed that the other Arab nations in the region would look after Gaza for the time being, and the Saudis and Syria would normalise relationships with Israel, which is a pretty big deal. I mean, it could lead to quite a large, economic agreement in the Middle East.
Gosh, it's been a big few weeks, hasn't it? Just having a look at these pictures from last week of Donald Trump arriving at that meeting there. There was NATO, there was the G7 in Canada just before it as well. Do you think that the significance of a ceasefire has come because of these meetings, or because Iran essentially agreed to the ceasefire conditions with Israel last week, which meant that really Netanyahu had to do something? Gaza was one of those things that was still going, but it was the only thing still going.
Well, that's right. I mean, Netanyahu said, the threat to Israel, the existential threat was Iran, and they were behind Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. And if Iran is weakened enough, then that at least takes away the lion's share of that threat. And that's basically why Trump had so much clout at NATO, and he's got more with Israel now that Israel stuck to the ceasefire with Iran after a couple of jitters that caused that famous expletive from President Trump. It's interesting, though, the terms, Aaron. I mean, they say that the Hamas leadership will be exiled, I assume to Qatar, I don't know where. It says that there'll be a deal between the Saudis and the Syrians and Israel, effectively a peace deal. And it also says that Israel would agree to a two-state if there's reform of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. I don't know what that means, but they're pretty big conditions if that's the case.
Oh, incredible when you think about where we've come from over the past few months as well, and the idea that there could be a two-state solution, because it's pretty confusing. Not so long ago, President Trump said the United States was going to take over Gaza, and there were all these AI-generated images of a future Gaza Strip that looked a bit like Surfers Paradise on the Gold Coast. Just going back to that Trump tweet, he says, "My representative had a long and productive meeting with the Israelis today on Gaza. Israel has agreed to the necessary conditions for that 60-day ceasefire." I'll bring it up on the screen as I read it. During which time we will work with all parties to end the war. The Qataris and Egyptians, who have worked very hard to help bring peace, will deliver this final proposal. I hope for the good of the Middle East that Hamas takes the deal, because it will not get better, it will only get worse. Thank you for your attention on this matter, says President Trump. Interesting, the Egyptians getting involved there as well, and the idea, as I mentioned, of what does the future of Gaza look like now? The Israelis saying that they will take over. Then you've got President Trump saying the Americans will take over. Who will rebuild?
The Gaza Plaza. Yeah, we saw those AI images. I mean, it was essential that the other Arab nations get involved. And it seems now that Hamas is turning on its own,
I'm surprised there's anyone left.
Sorry?
I'm surprised.
Well, no, it's extraordinary because there's internal strife within Gaza now, because, people are now turning against Hamas, which of course they should, because they've led them through into this disaster. And, the only way it's going to be sorted out is with the other Arab nations. And they see now the opportunity to work with Israel. With Iran out of the picture as a force, the Saudis and the Egyptians and everyone else can now work with work with Israel, and ultimately you could get a lot of economic potential unleashed. And I think that that was driving a lot of Trump's motivation.
What does the future look like for Benjamin Netanyahu as Prime Minister of Israel, given there are a number of things that could bring him down? There's a lot of frustration about the war in Gaza throughout Israel, but also the corruption too.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, if you talk to his supporters, he's a war leader. He's like Churchill. He's brought Israel through
What happened to Churchill after the war?
time. Yeah, so I mean, Churchill, of course, lost the election in 1945. So being a war hero doesn't guarantee you electoral success. Churchill didn't even become prime minister until the 50s, long after the war. But so that will play out. I'd imagine that Netanyahu is now strengthened in a sense, because after October the 7th, he was blamed for the intelligence failure that caused that initial attack on the music festival and the kibbutz. But now, having seen off Iran, it seems, and agreed to a ceasefire, or two ceasefires within a couple of weeks with President Trump, he's probably going to be a lot more strengthened than he was before.
All right, we'll leave it there. Professor Tim Harcourt from UTS, host of the Airport Economist channel, right here on Ticker. Always appreciate your thoughts, your insights and your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron.